Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Sweat, presented by DraftKings. Alongside TV's Jessie Coffield, I'm Twitter's Emerson Lotzia, wishing all of you a great morning, especially Samir Daouk, a crucial and emotional member of our DK content team. Today, we celebrate his parents making him. Happy birthday, Samir. We love you.
28 and feeling great. Happy birthday, Samir. Now to the show, which includes a lot of NBA and NHL and PGA, but the time of year, NFL reigns supreme, right?
Yeah.
So let's get some divisional round best bets from DraftKings contributors Pierce Dietrich, Reed Fowler, and Steve Buchanan.
Okay, Steve, start us off, please. What is your favorite spread on the board out of the 4 games in the divisional round this weekend?
Boy, coming onto the show, I said, what are my counterparts going to bring up? So, ideally, the best value on the board is the Packers -6. Because let me tell you something, Jimmy Garoppolo is not going to play in this game. So once that news comes out, you're going to see this spread move. But I'm going to take it a step further. I am going to go with the team that made me more money than any other team in the league. The Cincinnati Bengals +3.5 against the Titans. Last week, I gave you an alternate spread to take. Take the 6.5 with the Rams. That was an easy cash. You know what else is going to be an easy cash this week? -6.5 for the Bengals against the Titans. They're going to wipe the floor with this team in that fraud secondary that they're running out. Oh, Derrick Henry's back. Yippee! Doesn't matter when they're down by 27 points because Derrick Henry doesn't catch. Let me tell you something. The Bengals have been one of the best teams against the spread as road underdogs. 4-1 in that scenario, covering by an average of 11.1 points. Give me the Bengals moving on easily against the Titans.
Love it. Joe Burrow, by the way, 4-0 straight up against the spread in his past 4 starts too, Steven. Reed, what about you, dude?
I don't know why Steve comes on this show and makes it so difficult for himself. He could just easily stick with the regular number in the spread, but he goes alternate. And that worked in our favor last week against Ulrich, but we all know Ulrich's a dope. So, that was an easy call. I know Pierce is on here wishing that the Steelers won, but old man Ben couldn't come to fruition. He couldn't do anything. But like Steve mentioned at the very onset, it's the Packers right now. The Packers right now at 6. It's potentially it could come down to 5.5, which is a dead number. But you talk about injuries, talk about that side with San Francisco and Jimmy Garoppolo not playing in that game. If that moves up, you're getting some extreme value under a touchdown for Aaron Rodgers. They're coming off a bye. They got a ton of rest. All of their guys are healthy. And you have a secondary that has Josh Norman on it. Emmanuel Mosley is fine, but Josh Norman is cooked. He is not a good cornerback right now, and I get it. Green Bay is not great against the run, and Eli Mitchell is fantastic, and I liked the 49ers earlier this week, but, hearing about Jimmy G with a bad thumb already and a bad shoulder, and Nick Bosa and Fred Warner being at less than 100%, I think both of them are going to play, but less than 100%, that scares me quite a bit because the 49ers rush and blitz the least, or one of the least teams out of the NFL, or the least, at least in this in the playoffs right now. So that's the one that catches my eye earlier in the week.
All right, Pierce, what's your favorite spread on the board?
Eve and I are in agreement, so that worries me a little bit here. So yes, the Bengals. The Titans are frauds. 24th. We look at strength of schedule. They've had a really easy schedule and a very fortuitous schedule. They played good teams at the right times. They're just not a good team. They play in the AFC. They play in the AFC South. They lost to the Steelers. The Bengals crushed the Steelers both times they played them. And Steve's right. Who cares about Derrick Henry? It doesn't really matter about Derrick Henry or not. And if Derrick Henry was fine, why are they rushing him back? If this was a good team, why are they rushing Derrick Henry back? But it doesn't matter because the Bengals offense is going to get up early on this team, force the Titans into a passing scheme, and that's how the Titans always lose. We've seen this before, and the Bengals have the offensive firepower to get up early and to pretty much just punch them in the face, knock them down, and the Titans never get up off the mat.
Mm-hmm. All right, Reed, how about your favorite total to target?
Yeah, it's probably that Green Bay game, but for parity's sake, I think targeting the Buffalo Bills in Kansas City and going on the over is pretty bullish. This is a high total at 54.5, 55, wherever it lands. It's right on a key number. And so if it is where it's at right now, under 55, I like it even more. If you look at both of these teams, especially from an offensive scheme perspective, Buffalo has really done well. And Brian Daboll, who's probably going to be a head coach somewhere else next year, has schemed perfectly when it comes to the playoffs and doing positive EV plays on early downs, right? Early down and distance. And that's what really gets this number up. And I get the secondary and the defense for Kansas City right now, is playing better, but they're still suspect. And I really like, and Josh Allen, you're probably buying the Bills and Josh Allen right now at his peak because of what he did last week. But if you look at this matchup earlier in the year, 38-20, they put up a ton of points. If you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, 7-4-1, hitting the over when the number is over 50, and Buffalo has been fantastic hitting the overs when the number has been over 50. So even though it's the highest, I have the most faith that both of these offenses will show up.
All right, Pierce, which total are you targeting?
I'll stay in that game, and I'm going to go on the other side. I know that the Bills and the Chiefs are third and fourth when it comes to points per game, but these defenses are much better than Reed is letting on. Buffalo, number one in DVOA. Buffalo, number one in points allowed. Kansas City, towards the top with 17.9 points allowed at home. You look at the first 7 games, which Reed points out. Kansas City was terrible. They were allowing 29 points per game, worst in the league. Over the last 10 games, Kansas City is only allowing 16.1 points per game. That's the best in football. They've made a lot of changes on the defensive end since that last matchup against Buffalo, and it's worked, obviously. The defenses, I think, are just as good as the offenses, and they don't even have to be that great. All they have to do is turn touchdowns into field goals, and you're going to stay under this pretty lofty number.
All right, Steve, what do we think?
There are 9 teams in the NFL that had at least hit the over on 50% of their games. 2 of those teams are facing each other this week with the Rams and Buccaneers. I like the over of 47.5 in this game. Look what happened with the Rams last week or the other day against the Cardinals. They decimated the Cardinals, and that's without even really utilizing Cooper Kupp, who only made 5 catches for 61 yards. Cam Akers came back. This freak of nature came back from tearing his Achilles and then ran the ball 17 times for 55 yards. Let me tell you something. This Bucs run defense, that stone wall that they had all season long, it sprung a leak. All of a sudden, they can't stop the run. That's not good news if you have a healthy Cam Akers back. Sony Michel, who still stinks, but whatever. He's been doing pretty good. I'll give him that, okay? But I think there's going to be a lot of points scored in this one. The Rams have to go fast. They have to keep the Bucs off the field. But when the Bucs are on the field, they're scoring. They're going to be able to score against this Rams secondary as well. I think that game's going over.
Guys, we also like to talk about games with high totals on the show. We do it quite a bit, but it's usually more fun, obviously. On the DK Sportsbook, though, there's a divisional round special that asks which game will be the lowest scoring game on divisional weekend. So Cincinnati, Tennessee, and then San Fran, Green Bay, currently tied as the favorite here, plus 200 odds. So which game will see the fewest amount of fireworks, do you think, Pierce?
Jump on the San Fran Green Bay game. We know Green Bay has the firepower to pour the points on to other teams, but we also know that when they get a lead, they'll just lean on the running backs, play safe at home, and work the clock. Their defense is a bend but don't break style, so they'll give up plenty of yards, but they'll eat up a lot of clock time, and they don't surrender that many points. And as Steve mentioned earlier, San Francisco's quarterback, jawline might be intact, but it looks like he's got other injuries that are probably going to limit their offensive potential against a good defense. And then also Green Bay, it's not going to be a necessarily easy time against the San Fran defense. So this would be my pick to score the fewest points.
All right, Steve, what do you think? Which one are you going with?
Yep, slim pickings here. Not a lot to choose from. So I'm going to agree with Pierce. Look, that San Francisco team is coming in pretty banged up. What's that defensive line going to look like when they take the field on Sunday, Saturday, whatever, when the game happens? I don't care what day it is. What's that offense going to look like when they take the field? Is it Jimmy Garoppolo? Is it Trey Lance? I don't think it really makes a difference, right, at this point. So for me, the Packers feel like one of the most complete teams that still remain in the playoffs. They got a great secondary. They got a great run defense, great offense, even though it's just Rodgers and Devontae Adams through the air, but that doesn't seem to matter. So I think the 49ers are going to struggle with the injuries that they have. I don't trust Jimmy Garoppolo at all, especially if they're playing from behind. So if I had to take a guess, I think there's going to be a lot of points scored over the weekend overall. But if that's the case, I think this is the game that can go under.
Okay, 49ers Packers 8:15 on Saturday night. Reed, which game will have the least amount of points do you expect?
Well, although I really appreciate Steve's shirt this morning in the Guns N' Roses, he is way off on Green Bay being a really good run defense. They are arguably one of the worst in the NFL, in EPA, in DVOA. But having said that, I agree with both of these guys that this is the game that probably at the first look has the lowest, right, because of all the injuries. I would argue, though, going back to that Tampa Bay game, Steve, and I actually like the over in that one. But if you look at that offensive line for Tampa Bay, right, with Jensen and Wirfs, Jensen's probably going to be in their center, but he came out a few plays, and I don't think Tristan Wirfs is going to play. That scares me a little bit. And if you look at Stafford and both of these offenses too, right, in Tampa Bay and Los Angeles, both of those games last week didn't really show us anything, right? Stafford threw less than 20 attempts. Philadelphia was, talk about frauds. Philadelphia was essentially a fraud to get into the playoffs, and it didn't show up, and Jalen Hurts and Sirianni just weren't ready for the moment. So that does scare me a little bit. And if you look at Stafford outside, right, he doesn't play well when he's not in a dome, and the Rams are 2-4 hitting the over in games on, away games outside. So that might scare me a little bit, but I'm on these guys. Just wanted to add some parity to the show.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for doing that.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
Means a lot.
Steve, the expectation around the NFL is that Derrick Henry will make his return from that foot injury he suffered in October when the Titans host the Bengals this weekend. So on the DK Sportsbook, Henry is minus 190 to score a touchdown. What are the chances he gets in the end zone if he suits up?
Yeah, I mean, you're really paying some, a premium price here for him to get into the end zone for somebody we haven't seen for months. But look, if they're going to use him in any type of scenario, using him in the end zone, the red zone is where they're going to be using him here. So, am I excited to pay minus 190 to put him in there to score a touchdown? Not really. But I think it's a pretty good piece that you can put in if you're creating it like a same game parlay, because like I mentioned, if they're going to use Henry in any type of scenario, using him in the red zone is what makes the most sense. So, you're paying a pretty hefty price for somebody we haven't seen in months, but that is the most likely scenario they're going to use him in. So, do I like the number? No. Can you use it as a piece in your same game parlay? Absolutely. I think that's a great piece to use that in, but I wouldn't be going more towards him scoring a touchdown. If I'm taking anything with him, I'll take a shot with first touchdown score at plus 450. That's the only touchdown they score. Then Joe Burrow scores 37 unanswered points.
Reed, how do you feel about this?
Yeah, I'm with Steve. If you look at the Cincinnati run defense, they've been pretty middle of the pack, right? Look at what the Josh Jacobs did last week. He averaged 6.7 yards per attempt. And, I kind of share the same worry as Steve does with how are they going to use him. And if they do, it's going to be in the red zone. Why not go with Ryan Tannehill anytime scorer at plus 290? Can't you see him running on a naked bootleg? When 22 comes in at the 5-yard line, 2-yard line, and everyone's expecting him to get the ball, everyone's going to be on him, and no one's going to be on Tannehill, who earlier in his career when he's with Miami or even with Tennessee, he was a guy who ran the ball quite a bit. So I don't like it because it's the you have to pay a huge amount of juice on this, but how can you not in terms of Henry when he's on the end zone? But give me some Ryan Tannehill.
Pierce, what do we think?
I'm with Reed. The Tannehill plus 290 seems to be the better bet. If Henry plays, he'll get in the end zone. I watched a 5-second Twitter clip of him in practice. He looks good to go. My expert analysis is he'll be fine. But I just don't understand. Maybe other people watch that clip. I bet it's going to get down to minus 200 or whatever. So if you're going to make that bet, you probably ought to make it now. But I would much rather take the plus 290 on Tannehill.
Hey, Reed, before you guys take off, give us one bold prediction for the divisional round weekend.
Allen Lazard, 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards rushing. No, just the 2 touchdowns. Over 100 is a little crazy. Like I mentioned Cedric Wilson last week for my Make It Rain pick, and he did pretty well, right? He didn't get in the end zone, but Allen Lazard right now on rest, this guy always seems to be the one that gets those long 40-yard bombs. So give me 2 touchdowns for Allen Lazard.
All right, Pierce.
I told you that Steve and I were in agreement. It's Bengals minus 6.5 at plus 320. And I let this wait to make this bet because I think the Derrick Henry hype train is going to push the odds more in the favor of Tennessee. So if you wait, you might get even more plus money on this bet. The Bengals are going to go out, score early and often, force Tennessee to be one-dimensional, and it's pretty much game over at that point.
All right, Steve, get weird for me.
I mean, how can I not go with what I said originally? I'm taking a 3.5-point underdog and making them 6.5-point favorites. That's your bold take. That's the one that's going to hit. You're going to thank me on Monday, and all will be right in the world. Joe Burrow, he's a stud, both physically and mentally.
Yeah, and those glasses, he just thinks they're cool.
They look great on him.
Yeah, tremendous job, gentlemen. We'll do that basketball thing after this. Welcome back to the sweat. Stop. We are now talking basketball with DraftKings contributors Gary and Thorne, Nick Fryer, and Matt Meiselman, who are all wearing the exact same outfit.
What is going on?
That's what happens when we get sent pieces of clothing from DraftKings.
Free stuff.
Like, you're lucky we weren't wearing that DraftKings hoodie.
It's a fine sweatshirt, high quality, and what I love about it the most is it doesn't look like something you got for free. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because it's so stylish.
I decided, they asked me what size I wanted, and I was like, I'm going to get a medium because I'm pregnant. So I was like, I'll get a medium.
That's great.
And it's
for you.
way too big. So.
Yeah. No, it's okay.
I look
Still got a few months
ridiculous
to
in
go.
it. But back to the show. This is NBA building blocks. So who are you building your lineups around at the following positions for tonight's 13-game NBA slate?
Holy crap, that's a lot of games.
Yeah, it's a lot of games. So who are you going to build around at center, Garion?
I mean, first, I just want it to be known that a medium is also way too big for me.
Yeah.
That's how in shape I am.
Yeah.
It's really big.
Let's talk about someone who should be in shape because he's been running around a lot the past 5 games, and that is Pascal Siakome, who basically doesn't come off the court anymore. The Raptors basically ran a 6-man rotation in their loss to Miami on Monday night. Maybe that changes a little bit if Gary Trent Jr., who is questionable for this game, is actually available. But right now, Nick Nurse seems very willing to just shorten his rotation in the middle of January, which is not something a lot of coaches would be doing right now. But Siakam has essentially looked like the version of himself from 2 years ago where he was second team All-NBA. His shoulder seems like it's back to 100%. He scored over 45 DraftKings points in 5 straight games, a span of time which he is averaging 40.9 minutes per game. I mean, this is really just a volume play at this point. He's $9,100. The matchup isn't even that great. Dallas's defense has been fantastic across the last 2 or 3 weeks, but Siakam's had a triple-double. Right now, in that same 5-game span, he's not just leading the Raptors in potential assists. He's 8th in the NBA in potential assists per game. He had 5 steals in his last matchup against the Heat. He really just checks every single category right now, and if he's going to continue to hover around $9,000, I think he's just someone you have to consider on every single slate.
All right, Nick, who do you think you have to consider at center?
Well, I know we got the super centers that you're going to be looking at: Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. And if you're going to go with one of those guys, I would say Jokic is going to be that guy tonight. But I'm with Gary, and I'm kind of going to go in a little bit of a cheaper range, but still at 9.5K, I'm going to go with Cat going up against the Hawks. I know he just went sub 40 DK fantasy points in his last time out, but that's the first time in a long while that's happened. This game has the highest total on DraftKings Sportsbook tonight, going up against the Hawks, and the Hawks are not good against opposing centers either. They've given up the 8th most fantasy points to centers this season and the 8th most rebounds to opposing centers this season as well, which to me, that's a little more important for Cat too, because now we're talking double-double and getting a little bonus there.
Nick, that is very nice of you to put a few pictures of your dad behind you to honor him.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I got him. It's like kind of like before and after too. It's like a little bit of a glow up, if you will. But I appreciate him. You know, if you can't love him at this point, I get confused with how Zoom works. If you can't love him at this point, you can't love him here, right?
Yeah.
You know, he's a world champion at dodgeball.
Is he really? I didn't know that. He doesn't tell me any of these stories. You know, I asked him.
That's because he doesn't like you. He doesn't talk to you. He doesn't like you.
That's not true. That's not true.
I guess it's like most dads, right? So
it's true.
You're gonna have to earn his.
He's extremely disappointed in you.
Affection. Matt, who are you building around at center?
Just feeling a little overwhelmed just looking at Nick's background, but
sorry.
I can pull it together.
Okay.
Neither of these guys mentioned the chalk center, who I probably would have avoided talking about just because I think everyone's going to play him, but that's Rudy Gobert at 8,500. The Jazz are playing the Rockets tonight, which is a really, really good matchup. And we don't have to worry as much about a blowout as normal either because Donovan Mitchell's not playing. He's in concussion protocol, actually. So better chance the game stays close. But Gobert also has the benefit of Hassan Whiteside still being out of the lineup. And normally you wouldn't think that the backup center being out actually matters for the starting center, but the Jazz don't have another backup center. They're playing Rudy Gay when Rudy Gobert's not on the court. I think they really do insist on giving him bigger minutes when they don't have a true backup center there. So a little more minutes security, and it's just such a strong spot for him. And I do think even in normal circumstances, 8,500 is too cheap for Rudy Gobert. So I really like him. I think he probably will be very popular, but this is chalk that I think you have to strongly consider tonight.
Hey, Nick, hook us up with a forward you think is worth building your lineup around.
So normally I'm not looking at these two guys, even though I do tend to watch the Celtics quite a bit. But Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, Tatum is at 9.4K and Jaylen Brown is at 8.6K. I think Jaylen Brown's a little bit more of an accent piece tonight if you're trying to get somebody in that 8.6K range. But if you're looking at a guy who you want to build around more so completely, kind of start your lineup with someone, Jason Tatum is going to be the guy for me at forward against the Hornets, because this is another pace-up spot for the Celtics, one of the high, well, actually not as high a total as you would expect for a Hornets game on DraftKings Sportsbook, but still, you always get that opportunity for this to turn into a bit of a blowout, or at least a barn burner, I should say. But the Hornets are one of the worst teams against opposing forwards in terms of fantasy production this season, particularly against opposing power forwards too, and Tatum kind of goes between the two. They're actually the worst against opposing power forwards. So Tatum would be my guy. If you're trying to get a forward that you're going to start your lineup with tonight, Jason Tatum's the one.
All right, Maddie, hook us up.
I'm going to go right back to the Jazz. With Donovan Mitchell out, I think that playing a whole lot of Utah guys will be a popular strategy, but there's so much expectation for fantasy points across the board with this team that you probably need someone. And if Jordan Clarkson is the guy that everyone's playing, I think we just go over to forward and look at Bojan Bogdanovic at 5,800. My guess is he'll be relatively popular, but not to the extent of Clarkson, not to the extent of some other cheaper players on the slate. So Bogdanovic at 5,800, it's just, I think he might be the guy that benefits the most in terms of scoring opportunities, aside from Clarkson on that Jazz team with Mitchell out. And if Clarkson is the guy that everyone's playing, I think this is a decent pivot. But either way, 5,800 is too cheap. I think the matchup is great, and not having Mitchell there just kind of means everyone on Utah is underpriced.
All right, Gary, who's got a good matchup tonight at the forward spot?
Yeah, I won't spend too long on it because I'm just going to mirror what Nick was talking about. But I think it's Tatum at 9,400. Generally speaking, I'm not someone who goes, oh, this guy scored this many DraftKings points against this team 3 months ago. It's relevant now. But Tatum dropped 65.75 DraftKings points against the Hornets, and I think that's relevant because a lot of people have done that against the Hornets. They're just a fantastic matchup. As Nick talked about, they are a high-paced team, second fastest pace in the NBA. They're also a terrible defensive team. They have the 5th worst defensive rating in the NBA. You can't ask for much more than that. Tatum's been pretty good lately. He's been doing a little bit in secondary categories, which is really what you need from the guy. You know you're going to get 25 points. It's a matter of, can he hit 10 rebounds? Can he rack up 5 or 6 assists? And he's been doing that as of late. And much like Pascal Siakam, he also never leaves the court. Across his last 5 games, he is 4th in the NBA in minutes, up around 38 per game. So it seems hard to imagine he's not going to break 50 DraftKings points tonight.
All right, Matt, which guard has that building block potential?
So I've given the chalk play already for both positions so far. I'll go a little more contrarian here. I don't think too many people are playing Ja Morant tonight for the matchup in Milwaukee against the Bucks, but Memphis is missing a lot of players. We have Desmond Bane and Tyus Jones out for health and safety protocols now. Dylan Brooks is already out with an injury, so I think that the cheaper Grizzlies will be popular. I think that Morant at 8,900, though, is not someone people are really going to want to pay up for. It's not an especially good matchup, especially if you bring Drew Holiday back in, who's questionable tonight. That's probably the person that's going to be guarding Morant head-to-head, but there are so few players on this Grizzlies team now that can score, and especially in the backcourt, that if the game is going to stay close, if the Grizzlies are going to be competitive, Morant is going to have to take on a larger role than normal. So I think the upside for him is very, very large. And at 8,900, which is a little more expensive than he's been, I don't think too many people are playing him either.
All right, Gary, and which guard are you going with?
Yeah, I think this is a nice spot for Ayo Dosunmu. I know he's been amazing his last 2 games. He's had 11x value in both of those contests. So to say he might go a little overlooked, that might raise some eyebrows. But I think his price point has gotten to a point, it's $5,800 tonight, where that's going to scare some people off. The fact that Alex Caruso is going to return for this game, I think that could also end up scaring some people off, even though I think there's a very high chance that Caruso has some sort of minutes restriction tonight. And just the fact we're talking about a 13-game slate. I think Dosunmu can kind of get lost in the shuffle just a little bit. But this is someone who has played over 38 minutes in each of the 2 starts he has made the past week with no Lonzo Ball, with no Zach LaVine. I mean, even with Caruso back, the Bulls still just have a really lengthy injury report. And I think that Dosunmu's going to have to play over 30 minutes in this contest, and he's already shown that he can contribute in a bunch of different ways. He grabbed 10 rebounds in one of those 2 starts. He dished out 10 assists in the other of those 2 starts. I just feel pretty confident in saying that he's someone who can bring back 6x, 7x value tonight.
All right, Nick, which guard are you rolling with?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the Hawks Timberwolves game. Trae Young at 9.8K. This is actually probably my favorite play of the night, as much as the Timberwolves have done well against opposing point guards this season. This has the highest total. I said this before on the DraftKings Sportsbook tonight, so you got to try and get a little bit of that action. I know there's a lot of value to be had elsewhere. If you're looking at studs, this is a good spot to go for it. This is a pace-up spot for the Hawks, too. I mean, I know that the Timberwolves are, 10th in pace right now this season, so this is a good chance for Young to go and get a little more shooting. But more importantly for him, he's done really well distributing the ball this month. I know he had a couple down games from a fantasy standpoint fairly recently, but by and large, he's done well throughout the course of the month, so I think tonight's a good night to back him.
Gary, in 13 games in the slate, we obviously know there's a lot of studs to choose from here, but what about if you were deciding to build your lineup around a value play? Is that a strategy you'd be interested in? And if so, who is it?
Yeah, I mean, Matt already mentioned that the Grizzlies are going to be a popular spot for value, and I would agree. I don't think this is a sneaky play by any means, but I think you have to look at John Conchar. He's $3,600 tonight. They are just missing virtually every wing in their rotation. I mean, it's Dylan Brooks, it's Desmond Bane, it's Kyle Anderson, Tyus Jones just got added as well. Like, the annoying part about the Grizzlies, generally speaking, is how just balanced their rotations tend to be. I mean, Conchar was someone who across the Grizzlies' last 3 games was 4th on the team in minutes, but that only meant 24.4 minutes per game. I just don't think they're going to have the capability to run the 11, 12-man rotations that they generally like to run, and Conchar is going to end up having to play somewhere in the realm of 30 to 33 minutes tonight. And for someone who's shooting 59% from three-point range since the beginning of December, for someone who we have found out recently is an above-average rebounder for his position. I mean, he's someone with a 13% total rebound rate so far this season. I just think there's a lot of ways that Conchar can reach value tonight, and probably just going to be osmosis if he's playing that many minutes. So it's hard to ignore him at 3,600. He's my favorite of the Grizzlies value plays.
Nick Buchanan, who is your favorite value play?
Yeah, so coming into the show, I was looking at Spencer Dinwiddie because he has a chance at a revenge game tonight going up against the Nets. I know he didn't take advantage of it earlier in the season, but I think tonight's a great night for him to do that. As much as Bradley Beal does impact his usage rate, I think his assist total on DraftKings Sportsbook, taking the over on that tonight, it's at 5.5 right now, is a good way to go. But Garion is right, and Matt was highlighting it earlier too. The Grizzlies are the way to go tonight. I think that Conchar is a great one. Melton's another one, and as much as Brandon Clark isn't the first guy you think of when you see 2 guards getting pulled out, I think with Anderson out as well, this is a good spot for Brandon Clark as well. He's a little bit more on the expensive end, so Conchar, Melton, those are probably the top 2. Also in the Wizards-Brooklyn game, to go back to that, Day'Ron Sharpe at 4.4K2. He's been providing 5 times value in 4 of his last 5 games. He's been getting a lot more minutes, too. He's starting for the Nets, too. So I think as long as Kevin Durant is out now, too, and you're still kind of dealing with some confusion at the big spot in Brooklyn, I think that this is a good spot for him, and the Wizards are not good against bigs either. All
right, Maddie, can you bet around value on this slate?
Yeah, I'll keep this one quicker since we kind of talked about these guys a bunch already. But D'Anthony Melton, John Conchar on the Grizzlies, 36 and 3,700 respectively. A lot of people are going to play them, so I actually think you can go to Jarrett Culver, who's $3,000. There's not much else after these guys. Like, it's Morant, it's Conchar, it's Melton. If there's foul trouble, if there's a blowout, if there's just someone playing poorly, Culver really, I think, is the only wing they have behind them on the depth chart, and he certainly will be a lot more contrarian than the guys I just mentioned. So I think pivoting to Culver for GPPs, he's the flat minimum. If you want to pay up for some guys that maybe other people aren't paying up for, need someone cheap, Culver at 3,000 makes a lot of sense.
All right, let's pivot to the sports book.
Ooh.
Nick, what's your favorite NBA bet on the sports book tonight?
So coming into, again, I was looking at the Grizzlies game for this one, but I've actually seen movement now where it was at 6.5 last I checked, but until right now it's at, they're 6-point underdogs. So it's going in the opposite direction I would have thought with what's going on with, but I know it's bench moves. But either way, the Thunder +7 against the Spurs tonight. I might even consider the Thunder straight up against the Spurs tonight. The Thunder are one of the best teams against the spread this season. I know they just were 10-point dogs going up against the Mavericks, and they lost by 2 in that game. They cover often as road dogs, 19-9 against the spread after losses too, which they're coming off of. The Spurs are good as home favorites, 6-3 against the spread, but on equal rest, the Thunder are the superior team, and they're just, in general, the Spurs are what, a little over 500 against the spread, but not enough for me to not back one of the best teams against the spread this year.
All right, Matt, favorite NBA bet on the DK Sportsbook tonight is?
So Nick just alluded to it, but I'm going to go with the Bucks at -6, and it's somewhat contingent on Drew Holiday returning. I think that's why we haven't seen this line move, is that Holiday is questionable tonight. He's been out for COVID protocols, and it sounds like he's close to returning. He's been questionable for conditioning, I think, a couple games in a row now. But assuming he's back, I think we will see this line move a lot in Milwaukee's direction before the game starts. Maybe it gets up to -8 or if not higher. I think it does deserve to be higher than that because Memphis is low-key just like missing everybody. And Ja Morant is the biggest name on the team. So if he's there, I think the public in general just doesn't seem to worry about them too much. But all of their depth players now, for the most part, are out. Tyus Jones and Desmond Bane being the most important ones. So I think that Milwaukee should be able to win this game comfortably if Drew Holiday plays. And even if he doesn't, I still think 6 might be a little bit too low of a spread.
Garion, favorite NBA bet?
Yeah, I'm going to go with a prop. So I already talked about how the Raptors are essentially running a 6 or 7-man rotation right now. It's generally all big guys. They don't have a lot of shooters, and that kind of creates a pressure on the couple guys who can shoot on that team to stand behind the three-point line and provide some spacing. And we've really seen that with OG Anunoby as of late. His three-point prop tonight is 2.5, and it's -125 to the over. He has cleared this prop in 4 consecutive games, a span of time where he has attempted 41 three-pointers. I don't think that's going to change tonight. I guess the one variable, would be, does Gary Trent play in this game? So maybe reevaluate if he's eventually ruled available. But if Trent is out, I think Anunoby clears this number pretty easily.
Guys, awesome job. Thanks so much for helping us out with hoops. So we're going to do the same thing, but on the ice right after this break.
Time to put this show on ice with our NHL panel, DraftKings contributor Jeff Ulrich and RotoWire's AJ Schultz and Paul Bruno. Guys, NHL opening faceoff time. So favorite DFS plays on tonight's short 3-game slate, just 3 games. So favorite DFS play at center, Jeff, who you going with?
Well, Jack Hughes. Everyone's paying up for McKinnon tonight. It's a 3-game slate. Nathan McKinnon is probably going to score a hat trick at some point. I'll let the other guys talk about Nathan McKinnon. I'm going to talk about Jack Hughes. 6,300. This is a player who's really started to come into his own of late. He's averaging 4 shots on goal over his last 10 games. So the shot rate has really been there for Jack Hughes. 13 points in his last 10 games as well. I mean, this is stuff we can all look up easily, but I mean, I think the biggest thing is the Devils really weak defensively right now, and they're getting into a lot of shootouts, and they've got the Arizona Cardinals on the slate here. So Jack Hughes has gone through a little bit of injury issues this year. Is a little bit disappointing start, but it's really starting to pick up for him. He's up to a point per game now on the year, and as you can still get him for well under 7K, but he's starting to produce more like those elites. I like Jack Hughes tonight. He's still really good value.
AJ, are you going to talk about Nathan McKinnon?
Yeah, I will, but I'll start by saying I think Jeff's definitely onto something here in terms of other options out there with Hughes and the Devils in particular. They're a team that I do like tonight as well. But as Jeff said, like paying up for McKinnon is hard to avoid right now. The Avs in January are averaging 4.33 goals per game in their 6 contests. And the matchup with Anaheim is not going to stop that anytime soon. They're probably going to put in a bunch of goals on them. So you start by getting McKinnon in at 8,800. As Jeff alluded to, he's got 4 multi-point games in his last 10. He's only been held off the score sheet in 2 of those contests. I know it's a big price tag, and so you got to find maybe a bottom guy like Hughes to kind of balance out the lineup. But I do think you look at McKinnon tonight for sure.
All right, Paul, who are you going with at center?
Well, my partners are onto something here, but I'm going to talk about all kinds of options. McKinnon, most expensive center, $8,800, gets a matchup against an Anaheim club that's been swamped with 21 goals against his last 5 games. That's the compelling case. Makes more sense, though, to be playing him in DFS than Austin Matthews, I will say, although Austin Matthews is going for an NHL record for most consecutive games with goals on the road. He's going to cost $8,300, but a tough matchup at MSG. Makes more sense for me to save on these guys and choose Nazem Kadri, in fact, for $7,600. He's enjoying a career best season and comes into this game with 12 points in his last 10 outings. And if you're going for a cheaper play, I like the New Jersey Devils too, but nobody's talked about Nico Hischier for $4,300, despite the fact he has a home date against the second worst club in the league in Arizona Coyotes, not Cardinals, Jeff. Hischier has 9 points in his last 10 games.
All right, how about your favorite DFS play at wing, AJ?
Well, I'm going to double down here with the Avs and stick with them and get in both Landeskog at 7,100 and Rantanen at 7,800. This offense is just generating too much goals not to get on board with their top line here. It's too good to skip on, and I really think you have to look at getting as many shares as you can of that top group and the number 1 power play and really stack that long.
All right, Paul, how about you, dude?
On a small scale of games tonight, that makes a lot of sense. But Willie Nylander also deserves a look. $7,100 for him. He's enjoying a career best campaign, second on the Leafs in points with a point per game in 36 outings. Has some of his best performances against the Rangers. I know that for a fact. And Toronto boasts one of the top offenses in the league and is well rested entering play tonight against one of the league's better teams. And they're one of the top teams on the road as well. Another Leaf, Mitch Marner's priced at only $5,500, the lowest I can remember for a guy who's been among the top 10 scorers in the league over the last 2 years. So that's a bargain. In the same game, though, Chris Kreider on the other side has quietly moved up among the top NHL goal scorers in the league with 24 tallies so far. He leads the Rangers by a wide margin, has 7 goals in his last 10 games, and he's priced at a reasonable $5,900 tonight.
Jeff, take us to the wings and things department. Who stands out to you?
I will do that, sir. And I mean, much like center, there's some really good value here as well. You want a piece of the Avalanche top line. AJ is right, but there's ways to fit them in, and there's some really, really like high-end values here too that you can build around. Clayton Keller is probably my favorite at 5,700. I mean, this is a player that, I mean, he's looked good in spurts, but it looks like he's finally starting to put together, much like Jack Hughes. 4.7 shots on goal over his last 10 games. He's averaged, you throw in a few block shots in there. He's just really producing. He's got 5 games with 20 or more DK fantasy points over his last 10 games as well. 12 points over that same span. And I mean, this is a great game for fantasy purposes. I know it's the Arizona Coyotes, not Cardinals. And like their offense is very hit or miss, but they're going up against the Devils team. They've just been decimated on the defensively. They don't have good goaltending. This is really good fantasy environment on both sides. And I think much like Jack Hughes, Clayton Keller is still underpriced because he's producing right now like an elite winger.
All right, let's move to the blue line. Favorite DFS play at defense, Paul?
Look, Morgan Rielly factors in as the busiest of Leaf players in terms of average ice time, and he's been on a roll lately. 13 points his last 10 games played. Consider he's only $5,900 when Cale Makar is costing $7,000, and he's got 12 points in the last 10 games. Devin Taves is scoring at better than point per game for Colorado, but nobody's talking about him because of his teammate Cale Makar. Taves cost $5,600 tonight. And finally, Arizona's Shane Gostisbehere is an intriguing option for me. If you want to fade the top guys at this position, he has rediscovered his top offensive form this season, has 7 points his last 10 games, driving the Coyotes' offense, and he costs only $5,300 for his match against his opponents tonight.
All right, Jeff, where are you going?
I think as vital as it is to pay up for Nathan MacKinnon tonight, it's probably just as vital to pay up for Cale Makar. Again, like you've got guys like Chychrun and Fox are good plays, but I mean, no one's matching Cale Maker's potential right now in goal scoring. Obviously, still on pace for over 30 goals on the season. Shots on goal plus blocked out shots obviously going up as well, and just like point producing. Again, no one really matching him. So I think the big question is, who do you fit in value wise with Makar? And I think Ryan Graves of the New Jersey Devils is a really good option. This is a player who's right now is averaging 4.4 block shots and shots on goal per game over his last 10 starts. The minutes have really gone up for him too, as the Devils defense has gotten decimated, well over 20 minutes in his last 5 games. So, you add in a really good matchup against the Coyotes. We've seen Graves produce some points in the past. I mean, I think at 4,700, he's a really good guy to pair with Cale Makar if that is who you choose to pay up for, which you should.
All right, AJ, who do you like on the blue line?
Well, I like Jeff's strategy of high and low, but I'm going to switch the players around here. I'm going to start with Adam Fox at the top. I just think he's been too good of late. Yeah, he doesn't have the same goals as Makar, but you can get him in there slightly cheaper. He's got 14 assists in the last 16 games. I like the Rangers tonight at home. I think they've been playing really well. I know Paul's going to hate to hear that. And then on the flip side, when you do try and find that value, you can do it without having to give up completely on Colorado and go Samuel Girard tonight at 3,800. He's getting plenty of minutes, both 5-on-5 and with the power play. Yes, he's with the second unit and not the top one, but I think it allows you to get a little bit more of Colorado without having to pay up at the very top of the price range, and you can go with Fox instead.
Hey, Jeff, do that thing we like and give us your favorite value play on this small slate.
Okay, I'll do that thing. We have to look at the New Jersey Devils here. I mean, it's just they have to be the spot. I don't know why some of these forwards are so cheap. My favorite, I talked about Jack Hughes, but I think pairing Jack Hughes with Pavel Zacha here makes a ton of sense. Zacha's 3,400. I mean, we've seen him as high like in the 5Ks this year. And yeah, he's going through a bit of a scoreless drought, but this is a player who will just show up with 5 shots on goal and a couple points, on a random night. And I mean, this isn't a random night either. We've got a really good matchup against the Arizona Coyotes. So I think Pavel Zacha at 3,400, like you pair him with Hughes. I mean, there's as much upside with that duo on the slate, anywhere on the slate really, outside of maybe like, McKinnon's line. So really liking that. And I think you can even go to the other side of this game and target some cheap Arizona Coyotes. I'm not sure if you really need to do that, though, on this slate. I just think you take the New Jersey Devils forwards. Someone brought up Hersher as well. So I like Zacha. He's my favorite value here. I think for GPPs, pairing him and Hughes, there's just plenty of upside with really good price.
All right, AJ, where are you going for value?
Well, I don't think a lot of people are going to necessarily agree with me and be on the Rangers tonight in that matchup with the Leafs. So I think you can get Capo Caco at just 3K tonight. He's set to play on the first line for the Blue Shirts. Comes in then as a bit of a contrarian play. And look, the goals are still not quite there, but he's been showing some signs of life of late with 3 helpers in his last 5 games. And so I think you can start getting, again, that contrarian play for a cheap guy in a top 6 role, first line role, in fact, without having to break the bank in Kako.
All right, Paul, bring us home.
There are value plays in each of the games tonight for me. Andrei Burakovsky's thrived as Nazem Kadri's winger for much of this season, and he's on a very nice career best pace for 31 points in 34 games played. He's priced at only $4,800 despite this second line opportunity, and 11 points in his last 10 games. Michael Bunting has a pretty nice assignment in Toronto too these days. He's priced at $4,600, gets to play with Matthews and Marner now that Mitch is back in the lineup, and that's good news for his ownership. I don't think it'll be very high. And then Lawson Krause, talk about low ownership possibility. He's on a pretty nice tear in Arizona with 8 points in his last 10 games. He's playing alongside Phil Kessel, one of my favorites. AJ knows that.
All right, let's wrap things up with your favorite NHL bet on the DK Sportsbook tonight. AJ, where are you going?
Well, I'm going to go right at it with Paul here. I'm sure he'll be on the opposite side, but I'm simply going to take the Rangers here on the money line at plus 140. They're playing at home. Shesterkin's the presumptive starter right now. He's riding a 4-game winning streak that includes a pair of shutouts. So plus 140 value. I think it's a great spot to take the Rangers tonight.
All right, favorite NHL bet, Paul?
I'm on the other side of that game. I won't bore you. That's no surprise. I also go to the alternate total goals prop for the Colorado-Arizona game and say, go big here. Instead of the minus 125 for the over 6 goals, I say go to 7.5 and take the bigger payout. I also mentioned Willie Nylander's numbers and his play against New York Rangers over the years, and his tendency to play well there will be a factor in him scoring tonight and paying off on that 170 prop for his goal. And on the other side of the ice, Artemi Panarin, like Marner, has been among the league's top point getters over the last couple of seasons, not having that big an offensive year so far, but I'd still like him to score tonight and pay on his plus 230 prop.
All right, Jeff, favorite bet?
Yeah, look, this is all about one game for me. You have to target the Colorado Avalanche here. Paul kind of mentioned it, and I do like that idea going to the alternate total. I'm not sure why there's a 6 handle on this game, though. Look, the Anaheim Ducks, 2 goalies coming off COVID, half their forwards banged up. I mean, I think Colorado's a very good shot of getting to 7 goals themselves here. Go to the Avalanche alternate team total under the team props. Go over 4.5 goals for the Colorado Avalanche. That's a plus 175. That's juicy. But I think Paul is right. You can take the over on the goals in this game as well. And look, you can just bet the Colorado Avalanche on the puck line at minus 1.5. It's still minus 105. You're getting good value there. Again, Ducks, very beat up. Half their top line is out. Their goalie's coming off COVID. Oh, it's going to get ugly tonight.
Well, you and the rest of the NHL panel were not ugly today. Thank you so much for your efforts and your time. We will wrap things up with a little peek at the American Express right after this. Golf. All right, we got ourselves another golf tournament this week in the PGA Tour, back to the mainland after the Hawaiian swing. And we have senior golf writer here for RotoWire, Len Hochberg from PGA Tour Chase or Fade. So do you agree or disagree the following statements about the American Express in California, just outside your neck of the woods there in LA? So John Rahm, Patrick Cantlay, they sit at the top of the salary board for this event, but just below them is a player who last played in early December, but has 3 top 5 finishes in his last 4 events. That's Scotty Scheffler. So chase or fade for me here, dude. 10-6 is a good price for him.
Emerson, Jesse, hello. Yeah, we have not a huge field, at least at the top, and not a super strong field at the top. Scotty Scheffler is one of 6 top 25 guys in the world in this tournament. And one of the problems we face is they've all had some relative success here. I mean, John Rahm has won it. Scotty Scheffler finished 3rd a couple of years ago, missed the cut last year. So it's really hard to pick, 1 or 2 from that list. But one thing I do look at is who has played in one of the 2 Hawaii tournaments. And 11 of the last 12 winners of the Amex have come from someone who played at least one of the 2 Hawaii tournaments. Scotty Scheffler did not go this week. I like Rahm and I like Cantlay a little bit more. It's not really a fade for Scheffler. It's just that I like the other 2 guys more. I would pay up for them as opposed to Scheffler.
All right, Taylor Gooch fell off a little bit in the final round last week at the Sony Open, but still shot a 69 finish, high enough to give him 3 top 30 finishes in his last 3 starts, including a win at the RSM Classic. So chase or fade that at 9,700, Gooch could add another win this weekend.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Gooch did have some troubles last week. He was paired with Kevin Na for the first 2 rounds. Clearly was not pleased with the slow play. Got away from him for the 3rd round. But as luck would have it, they were paired together in the 4th round. As you mentioned, he did not have a great 4th round. But interestingly, even though this tournament, where there are pro-ams for 54 holes, talk about slow play, Taylor Gooch has played well here. He's made 4 cuts in 4 visits, top 25s the last 3 years. He's finished 4th 1 year. And all of this before he became Taylor Gooch, before he became good. So I do like Gooch this week.
All right, let's talk about Mr. Bill Haas here. Yes, he did miss the cut last week and hasn't finished better than 45th in his last 8 PGA Tour events. However, he has won this event twice. Last time, 2015. 1 runner-up finish there on his resume at this tournament. So chase or fade that you are willing to take a risk with Haas this week at a low, affordable $6,100. Oh.
Yeah, very, very bargain basement price. I mean, I'm not afraid to go that low. I went 6,100 last week. I told you about Vaughn Taylor, and he did make the cut. So, but I don't think Bill Haas is the way to go this week, even though I think we will see a bunch of 6s make it to the weekend. And we've seen some real long shots come in the last few years here. So much variance in this tournament, but Bill Haas's best days are behind him. He's missed the cut 4 years in a row. I'm sure he loves coming to this place with great memories, but I think you can find to spend your money elsewhere down there. Yeah.
Yeah, Len, I mean, Haas obviously qualifies as value, but who are some other names on the board that you might be chasing as value plays? Doesn't sound like Haas is the way to go for you.
Yeah, I'm going to go low, but not quite as low as 6,100 this week. $6,600. Wesley Bryan, probably not a name I don't think I've ever mentioned in the 2 years or so I've been with y'all. And that's because he's been hurt for much of the last 2 years. He's played only 20 tournaments in 2020 and 2021. But he came back in the fall on a major medical, made the cut at the Zozo, 27th last week at the Sony. He has 4 tournaments left to get his card on his major medical. Really a wizard with the wedge, great putter, short course. I think he can certainly pay off at $6,600 and $6,300. Trey Mullinax missed the cut last week, but did get in some action. 3 for 3 at the Amex in making cuts, and really good at par 5 scoring, an important stat this week. I look for him to make the cut.
All right, Len, before you get out of here, a tradition unlike any other, who is your favorite golfer to take home the hardware at the American Express and why?
Yeah, there aren't too many people who go to Hawaii and have a lousy time, but I think Abraham Answer was probably one of them. He finished 35th out of 38 at the Tournament of Champions, and then he missed the cut at the Sony. But he is just too good to keep down for too long. When you're a laser-like iron player, that's not like putting that can come and go and stuff. So I don't think this slump is going to last long. He was 5th last year at the Amex, 2nd the year before. Really plays this tournament very well with all its quirks. I like Abraham Answer this week, 9,200, something like that. Yeah.
All right, Len, thank you so much. Good stuff. That's a show for us. We are back with The Sweat tomorrow at 11 a.m. Matt and Sim up next, though. We got Chiefs at Seahawks at noon.
Yep.
Then you got to hang out for the slate. It's tonight at 5. We're going to have more on the PGA Tour. And then
there's Jeff, there's Reed,
NFL, you.
Yeah, for
Reed,
sure.
Jeff, you.
I hope you guys can tune in at 5 o'clock.